Welcome everybody, man. Holy crap. Did we just witness not even 30 minutes ago? Maybe a little longer than that, but it was recent. And a bombshell just got dropped. I'm looking around trying to get myself together right now because I was not expecting to have to, I got off of work, and as soon as I got off, I saw the news, and then I went to straight making some graphics for this and and updating everything that I had to get updated, man. But first of all, before we get into it, if you guys didn't know the news, if you guys, just saw the news, Micah Parsons has been traded to the Dallas Cowboys, and it's absolutely insane. I'm sorry. Micah Parsons got traded to the Green Bay Packers from the Dallas Cowboys. Look, I'm all screwed up right now. It is absolutely crazy, man. Hold up. Let me make sure. If you're in the chat, say something. I just want to make sure the chat's working on my end. But the news is that Micah Parsons is now a Green Bay Packer, and I honestly am shocked by the move. I know that there was several talks of that this was going to possibly happen. And when we all heard the trade package, it was like, how can the Dallas Cowboys really turn down this offer? And they didn't. The 2 first-round pick things was true. Looks like they're going to be eating up his contract too and making him the highest paid player outside of a quarterback, right? And we'll get into all the details, man. Let me just make sure that I got all my stuff straight here and update some things. But, dude, off the eve of this is absolutely crazy. Just Micah being traded to the Green Bay Packers is insane. Let me make sure I get this updated too. My goodness, I had to get myself together here. All right, I think we're good to go. Let me go ahead and save that. But shout out to everybody in chat. Andre's in the chat. Does this go down as one of the biggest fleeces in history? I don't think so. I think this is very... I mean, if you were going to trade a Micah Parsons, the one thing that you wanted to accomplish if you were the Cowboys was to somebody take his contract and extend him, but also get a ton of draft capital back with the 2 picks. And I think that's what was done. And now we usher in the future, not only of the shape of the NFC North, but the shape of the whole entire NFL and the Dallas Cowboys at this point in time. And this is insane, man. Let's look into some of the details. The Cowboys not only received Kenny Clark, but they received 2 first-round picks, and Micah Parsons heads out to the Green Bay Packers, man. I'm still at like a lost words. Let me make sure I bring the chat over here because this is insane. I don't know why I can't put your guys' chat up on the screen. Let me make sure. Let me trigger this. It looks like that's working, but my regular chat is not. Make sure I restart this. But man, I'm just in total disbelief right now. So let's get into some of my thoughts around this. Shout out to everybody in the chat. I don't want to miss your guys' comments. Let's Riot says, feel bad for Dallas sports fans out there. Luka Doncic and now Micah Parsons going in the same year. Yeah, I'm definitely not a basketball guy, but I understand the impact of Luka Doncic and how he was for the Mavericks. I can't wait for Jerry's explanation at the press conference. Look, it's just that they didn't think he was worth that money. I really think it comes down to we have a couple players on this team that we feel really highly of. We think that Micah Parsons is probably a distraction with everything that he's got going on. He's not happy. Let's send him out somewhere else. He's been, in cahoots with the Eagles and all kinds of other stuff with their players and, talking good about other teams. But yeah, it's crazy. So let's get into the details here. Of course, Cowboys received Kenny Clark and 2 first-round picks. The Packers have agreed to a 4-year, $188 million deal done by his agent, which is insane. $136 million guaranteed at $47 million per year, which makes Parsons the highest paid non-quarterback in the history as Dallas takes 2 first-round picks. It's incredibly lucrative on both sides. The last time that we seen 2 picks go to somebody was the Jalen Ramsey trade when he went to the Rams, right? And Jalen Ramsey was in his prime, just like Mike has been in his prime as well. And it's almost like the parallels of the 2 situations are just hilarious. 2 guys that were just absolutely unhappy with how not only their contracts, but the way that their teams have been going. A couple thoughts for me, man. Of course, this is very, very Green Bay Packers heavy when we talk about this. Rashawn Gary, Edgerrin Cooper, and Micah Parsons with Quay Walker all being on the same team. Move over Lucas Van Ness. I think that your days are not only numbered, but you need to find maybe playing a 4-eye or 3 technique like he kind of did at Iowa. Because your 2 edges are locked up and you have 2 bona fide great linebackers there as well that are going to eat. Teams are going to run the ball now. They're Jared Goff, the rest of those guys in the NFC North. What a entrance that JJ McCarthy in his first official year is going to run into with these guys. So I feel bad that he's going to have to go against these guys, and then a healthy Aiden Hutchinson coming back, and my goodness, man. And then the Bears just built up their defensive line too, but Caleb Williams, man, in his second year is going to be running for his life as well. But this is directly going to make teams run the ball against the Packers, and it's almost like a two-edged sword, because you're going to have these 2 guys running up against Quay Walker and that defensive line. And I know Kenny Clark's not there, but they still have some pieces. But Edgerrin Cooper and Quay Walker, they're absolutely going to be, I don't even know, man. They might have 200 tackles between each other this year because of those 2 guys setting the edge. Insane. Rashawn Gary is probably thinking his lucky stars right now too, because I think we don't talk about enough of, and we're going to get into the Bengals situation with them and Hendrickson, right? But nobody benefits more from having another great edge rusher than the edge rusher on the opposite side, right? We saw it with Sam Hubbard and Trey Hendrickson for years. We saw it with Malcolm Kuntz when he was healthy with Max Crosby. You've seen it with Trayvon Walker and Josh Hines Allen with the Jaguars, and the list goes on and on and on. And to be honest, if teams are not running the ball, man, one of the deficient parts of the Packers has been their cornerbacks, right? Not having Jair Alexander healthy, who used to be, if not the best cornerback in the league by all regards. You make these guys that are kind of okay even better. Keyshawn Nixon, Bo Melton, Nate Hobbs, they might feast this year if teams decide to pass the ball. If the running game doesn't work, then you obviously got to go back to the passing game. But when people are rushing the passer, you got Jared Goff and Caleb Williams and JJ McCarthy that are just – JJ McCarthy may throw 6 interceptions against them in the 2 games that they're going to play. Xavier McKinney, one of the league leaders in interceptions last year. Man, y'all don't think he's going to be good again? Craziness, man. I think Xavier McKinney is going to have another big year because of this. This deal has been talked about for days, man. I don't think anybody was overshadowing the fact that this has been talked about for days. It's been rumored that the Packers have been picking up the phone talking to the Cowboys, and it's the parallels are just insane between 2, obviously legacy teams making a legacy for a player that could have a great legacy from here on out and is going to play for a fan base that's super passionate and it's got a lot of hype behind him after drafting, 𝙁𝙤𝙘𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 a couple years ago. Quay Walker coming in his own, as long as he keeps his head on straight. Has been missing at receivers from time to time again that just haven't panned out. And then they go and get, Matthew Golden, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit too. And Jordan Love is taking the mantle, and hopefully he has another great year coming up, and having Tucker Kraft and all those guys down there, man. Like, it's a great situation to be in. It is a great, it's a great day to be a Packers fan if you're a Packers fan, right? And you lock up a guy, if Rashawn Gary goes down, now you feel really good about having a Micah Parsons there as well to help carry the mantle forward, just in case, just in case things go awry. So I don't want to keep talking about this too much more, man. I'm sure there's a lot of Cowboys content creators, a lot of, Green Bay Packer content creators, Tom Grossi, my guy Jay Tuck, all those guys that are going to pick this up and run with it. But what a day, not only to be a Cowboys fan, but to most importantly be a Green Bay Packers fan. I think this handled both situations and directly filled in gaps of both of these teams. Those gaps we won't be able to see yet until next year in their draft, but hopefully whatever that they decided to do, that the Packers know that they got them one of those ones. Soul Brother number 1 says, as a Giants fan, I love it. Yeah, you don't have to worry about that no more. You don't have to worry about one of the best defensive players no more. Until your team schedules them for one game where, you meet the Packers in the playoffs, which, hopefully doesn't make your head spin. You know what I'm saying? One Flamigo, Jerry Jones turns the franchise around by getting rid of Dak after this season and trading for Shedeur. I don't foresee that happening either, but we'll see what happens for if the Cowboys trade for Shedeur after having 2 first-round picks in this. Man, if they don't pick a quarterback this time around, if Dak's not the guy, they just don't know what they're doing. Let's put it like that. But good on Micah Parsons. Great news today. Would love to know your guys' thoughts, still on this trade, but I think both those teams came out pretty well today. And we'll see what happens with the Green Bay Packers this season. I just think that there's going to be a lot of interceptions thrown against them. I just think there's a lot of interceptions being thrown against a lot of interceptions that the Packers are going to have this year for sure. And a lot of tackles are going to be made by Quay Walker and 𝙁𝙤𝙀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 for sure. All right, let's talk about Rashee Rice a little bit, man. Was suspended for 6 games. And, one thing that I'll say about Rashee Rice, I don't agree with what happened, the hitting and running situation. He definitely broke whatever the NFL personal conduct policy was, and he understood that. They smacked him down with a 6-game suspension. And, he pleaded guilty. He didn't plead innocent, which kind of softened the blow for a lot of people. And he also didn't appeal, most importantly, the decision that the NFL has come down to suspend him for 6 games. Look, I think it was a great move by him. Young, you learned your lesson. You shouldn't have done what you done. It was clear as day. Everybody saw the video. If you didn't, I'm sure it's floating around there somewhere. But let's get into how obviously that this is going to impact the Chiefs. First of all, Rashee Rice is a hell of a player, and he'll be back. But in that short amount of time before he comes back after his 6-game suspension, who's going to turn out to be the number 1 guy there, right? Xavier Worthy, they drafted him. He had a really good year last year, but I still don't think that he's a number 1 receiver for any team, even the Chiefs. Understand that you have Patrick Mahomes, 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 and the guys are back healthy this year. But as far as 𝗕𝑎𝑗𝑎𝑊�worthy, I think he's one of those, flash in the pans type of players that is going to be able to stretch the field, but he's not a rep after rep after rep guy, right? Juju Smith-Schuster knows the system at this point. Is going to be a legacy kind of Chiefs player from here on out. Kind of calmed down on the TikTok days, and he's a trusted weapon for Patrick Mahomes, and I think he's a great number 3 for what they have. Travis Kelce, this is probably his last season. I don't need to reiterate on the fact that Travis Kelce, and everybody knows the whole thing with him and Taylor Swift, and they got engaged. But obviously, I guess he's setting his life up to move past football at this point, and great for him. But we can see kind of the downturn of Travis Kelce right now, and one of those other receivers is going to have to, other tight ends are going to have to step up to the plate eventually. Now, the most interesting part of this whole thing is there's one guy on this roster that needs to prove himself within the 6 games, and I believe that could be the number 1 target for Patrick Mahomes. And I told everybody about this guy, even before the draft happened. I told everybody about him, during the draft process when we were watching this film. Jalen Royals is going to emerge as probably the number 1 weapon during this period of time. Rashee Rice may be the number 2 receiver. Juju Smith-Schuster will probably be pushed out to wide receiver number 4, and 𝗕𝑎𝑗𝑎𝑊�worthy will probably be receiver number 3. Hollywood Brown, I know they brought him in, but what exactly is he going to be for the Kansas City Chiefs from here on out? I'm not sure. He's still battling some injuries. Hopefully he makes a full recovery, but he hasn't been the same ever since he's been with the Baltimore Ravens. In my opinion, like, his best days are behind him. So we'll see what happens. But I appreciate the fact that Rashee is going about this the right way. Again, the details are will serve a 6-game suspension for the car crash, the hit and run that had happened in 2024, breaking the NFL personal conduct policy. He pleaded guilty to the 3rd-degree felony charges, and the NFL has smacked him down with a 6-game suspension. So good on him, man. I think he'll be better because of it. And you do the crime, you do the time, and he didn't cry and complain about it, didn't appeal it. And I respect the fact that Rashee did that, and he's taking some accountability for himself. And I'm sure, when you're playing for a team like the Kansas City Chiefs and how they established themselves, you're not going to want to leave the good graces of an Andy Reid, or ruin that relationship you have with Andy Reid, and most importantly, Patrick Mahomes down the road. So we'll see what happens from here on out with them. In other news, Chris Ballard has come out and said, we will not trade Anthony Richardson. So he confirmed this as of yesterday, Wednesday, the 27th, coming out and saying that, regardless of what happened with Anthony Richardson and his preseason, what he's done in the past, and regardless that Daniel Jones is here, that he will remain on this roster from here on out. I respect it. Looking at Anthony Richardson's career, even since high school, since his college career, we told you that this guy was not worth a 4th overall pick, and everybody kept telling us, like, oh, Anthony Richardson's going to be a beast. The tale of the tape is he's 8-7 in his career with the Colts. 176, 348, 50% completion percentage, which is rough. 2,391 yards, 11 passes, touchdowns, 13 interceptions. His touchdown interception ratio is on the opposite spectrum for where you probably should be as an NFL quarterback. On top of all the injuries that he's had, which we'll talk about that. 10 rushing touchdowns, 635 yards, and 12 fumbles. 12 fumbles. He's played in 15 games and fumbled 12 times. He's played in 15 games and has a total of 25 turnovers. It's pretty rough. Well, probably not turnovers, but he, coughed up the ball this many times in bad situations, right? To me, this is giving the Colts, the Colts are giving Anthony Richardson a positive update, right? To me, this is all positive vibes for Anthony Richardson. Hopefully he can turn out to be the guy that they drafted him to be. Yet again, they're giving him another chance, listed as number 2 on their depth chart, with a couple of really good backups there that have played in this preseason and have been there for a couple of years, backing him up. To me, this screams we're not giving up on Anthony Richardson. We understand what he's about. We understand that he's had some injuries, and obviously he's a good kid, and his teammates like him, and you don't hear anything bad coming out about this, right? Well, his teammates saying anything bad or remotely, being snide to Anthony Richardson. He knows the system that Shane wants to run, and that only is going to help the guys on the roster be better every single day, especially on the scout teams and things like that. He's going to be able to help, get those guys prepared on a daily basis. He's going to be able to simulate the Lamar Jacksons and the Michael Penix and the Bo Nixes and the J.J. McCarthy's of the world when it comes around to playing those type of quarterbacks. And I think Shane Steichen is secretly holding on to hope that he can possibly unlock the talent of an Anthony Richardson if things don't show up the way that he wants them to with Daniel Jones, right? Shane Steichen's on a short leash, ladies and gentlemen, regardless of what happens. He is responsible for drafting this guy 4th overall. And I think that was all over a scarce situation of if you don't draft Anthony Richardson and he actually turns out to be good, then we don't want to be known as the team that passed up on the talent that an Anthony Richardson does have. Look, Anthony Richardson is 23 years old, ladies and gentlemen, and he's only older than a couple starting quarterbacks in this league. Drake May and J.J. McCarthy are younger than him. But when you look at the guys that were rookies last year and the rookies that, the guys that are rookies this year, let me name a couple names that he's younger than. Right? We said he's older than Drake May and J.J. McCarthy, but he's younger than Caleb Williams. He's younger than Cam Ward. He's younger than Bryce Young, Tyler Shuck, C.J. Stroud, Bo Nix, Michael Penix Jr., and Jaden Daniels. And so, doesn't look too good having the career that you've had this far at the age that you are, but the positive outlook is he's still young in his NFL career, right? I don't think there's teams that are giving up on Drake May and J.J. McCarthy, but league years are league years, regardless of what age that you are. And he's been in the league a couple years, and he's had some really bad turnouts. It's not like he didn't have Michael Pittman and Jonathan Taylor and Mo Alley Cox and Alec Pierce and Josh Downs and a great offensive line and a pretty good defense and a good head coach and a pretty decent GM that's able to draft, pretty well and put some pieces around you, and you still couldn't perform, man. It's one of those things that I've always said. If you're with this type of team and you fail, it's kind of your own fault at this point. And I still go with the fact that I think Daniel Jones will be comeback player of the year. But this is one of those times for Anthony Richardson to reflect, be ready, keep Daniel Jones on his toes, and most importantly, have this team prepared to play week to week in a division that's still, to me, up for grabs. And they possibly have the best team in the AFC South on paper. Be next to the Shane Steichen. Be next to Jim Bob Cooter, your offensive coordinator. Look at what Michael Penix Jr. has done the last 2 seasons. Look at his preseason, how he's staying next to the offensive coordinator, how he's getting his teammates prepared, how he's working with the wide receivers to tell him exactly what he likes. Maybe these are the things that you haven't done. I don't know you, Anthony. Maybe you have done these things, but just from a visual standpoint, you look at guys like Michael Penix Jr. and the rest of these veterans, even Aaron Rodgers, when I went down and watched them at their practice. These are the things that quarterbacks have been doing to help their team, and to always be prepared. And he could take a little bit of notes from these guys. The one thing that is concerning to me is Riley Leonard can skip past him if he does the things that Anthony Richardson hasn't done. And that should scare the absolute shit out of him. You could be third stringer on this roster if you come in, let's say Daniel Jones ends up having, one of those things where he has to sit out of a game. Don't wish injuries on anybody, but injuries are part of the game, so we'll discuss it here. But let's say you have to come in for a game for Daniel Jones and you don't perform, but Riley Leonard does. Then we're talking about a situation where you should have been ready and you let the rookie be ready. There's a couple things about Riley Leonard, right, that a lot of people are not talking about. Outside of a big arm, Anthony has never been a winner or had games that Riley has. Riley played at Duke, put that team on his back, battled some injuries, went to Notre Dame, was in a national championship game, and has been around some really good coaches, and Mike Elko and Marcus Freeman. So he's actually not only had more success than you as a quarterback, but has dealt with similar adversity, got over it, and has made his team better because of it. I think it's time for us to, give him a little bit of more grace because he is 23 years old. But also on the other side of that, understand that football years are still football years. NFL years are still NFL years. And if you're not going to take the mantle in your first couple of years and constantly have a quarterback come over you, or be in front of you time after time again, or you're quitting in games, it doesn't make the resume of Anthony Richardson look good. And so I wish nothing but Anthony for success, but I mean, it is a good thing that the Colts are not trading him, because a lot of people, podcasters have been inquiring about what it would take to get an Anthony Richardson on our team. But the writing was on the wall ever since college, you guys. He's not what everybody thought he was going to be. Maybe this is one of those things where he's so athletic and it's time to transition to tight end or something like that. I hate to say that, but having such a big arm. But just because you got a big arm doesn't mean that you're a great quarterback. I've said this time and time again. Trey Hendrickson is returning to the Bengals, and they gave him a pretty good chunk of change, man. I think that this was the right move. If you're a Bengals fan, you wanted to see Trey Hendrickson return to the Bengals. It's better to have Trey Hendrickson there than to have lost Trey Hendrickson to somebody else, plus on top of having a rookie defensive end, on top of having Sam Hubbard retire on top of that as well, right? And so Hendrickson and the Bengals have agreed to a rework contract that will provide him with $14 million raise that is going to bring his 2025 salary to $30 million. So no extra years added or anything like that, but money definitely appeases him. He gets more than 2x of what he was making before, which I think as a aging edge rusher, I think he's in his 30s now. Still playing at a high level, been playing at a high level since he's been with the Saints, man. And it's been disrespected. We could talk about the Trey Hendrickson thing and where I feel he's at in his NFL career, unlike a lot of other edge rushers. But having 17 sacks is pretty good at for a 30-year-old. But look, this helps Shedeur Stewart. Shedeur Stewart has not only shown some flashes during the preseason, but when he returned to practice, he was making moves. I know you guys seen some of the clips of him just manhandling people. Shedeur Stewart is going to be very good. And a lot of people look at his sack total and they're like, oh, well, how would you draft a guy this high? Well, if you would have came to one of our film studies, if you would have talked to 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗀𝘀𝗀𝗀 yourself, you would know. If you watch college football and understand that Texas A&M's front seven was absolutely insane and he was a big part of it, sacks don't tell the whole story on the Shedeur Stewart journey. But Trey Hendrickson is definitely going to help him. We talked about this before with the Micah Parsons situation, right? Him being next to Rashawn Gary. The best dancing partner for a edge rusher is the edge rusher that's on the other side of the ball opposite of him, right? And so Trey Hendrickson gets his Shedeur Stewart, a.k.a. Sam Hubbard, on the opposite side of the ball. This is what's interesting. We either get to see the impact of him not practicing or the impact of him staying healthy. It's so, I think getting practice reps and things like that absolutely does matter, and staying in shape, especially at his age. But then there's also guys like Aaron Rodgers that don't practice as much and know what's expected of them as a veteran player. So guess we'll see what happens after that. He is healthy. He always usually stays healthy. And so I guess that's one of those things that the Bengals can count on, that he's going to keep not only himself in shape, but to be healthy as a player in the NFL. This defense would have been much worse without him. I think we all can, call a ball, a strike, right? You're not a good player unless you are practicing against players that are good. And I believe there's no better example of that than Joe Burrow being able to play and deal with the pressure and the bad offensive line that he's dealt with Trey Hendrickson. But we tend to give excuses for guys that have bad O-lines when bad O-lines start with the quarterback first. But if you're Joe Burrow and you're putting up the numbers that he did last year, then you can truly come down and say that, yeah, his offensive line is absolutely terrible, and that it's not, Joe's doing everything that he can with the O-line that he has over the last couple of years, right? But getting your O-line to practice against Hendrickson and a Shedeur Stewart is better. Can Shedeur Stewart be his Sam Hubbard? Who knows? But this all comes with the territory. This will give Chase Brown and company a high caliber player to practice against. I know we keep talking about practice, but it absolutely does. Does the O-line get better now that he's there? Do the tight ends get more, better quality blocking reps against a legit edge rusher? I guess we'll see when it comes to, when they step on the field next week. But this is a more positive than it is negatives for the Bengals. The Bengals have been a poverty franchise and just not have done the right thing up to this point. It seems like with every single player that is a superstar, they never do the right thing until the last moment. But for whatever reason, Trey Hendrickson comes back for the Bengals wearing that striped helmet. I'm going to try to get them to make a push in the AFC North. So there are the details on Trey Hendrickson. Let's get over to the New York Giants, man. I know I got some Giants people here, and Jackson Dart has been shining through the preseason, right? And I don't think that there's any mystery that he has been kind of the talk out of all the rookie quarterbacks, that he's probably number one coming out of the preseason, and he's been putting up the numbers, right? You're looking at the numbers here. 32 for 47, 68% completion percentage, 372 passing yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. I think he had like 40-something yards rushing, and he had a touchdown on the ground as well. Jackson Dart has been absolutely outstanding, despite how I felt about him coming out of college in the Lane Kiffin system. When all I seen from that system, get the ball out quick on a couple curl or comeback routes, throw a 9 route to Trey Harris, and let's see how we're looking. Yeah, that stuff works in college. But the one thing that I did want to see from him is kind of take a back seat, and I think the Giants are doing that by announcing that Russell Wilson is going to be their week 1 starter, and I hope they let this kid marinate for as long as possible. You can't take away what Jackson Dart did in the preseason, regardless of how you evaluate him before this process. And he's been really, really good. He's been outstanding. He's been beyond outstanding at this point in time. Look, one thing that I've noticed when he's played in the preseason is he's looked really relaxed out there. Able to read his keys, able to, fit the ball in a really tight windows. And a lot of that stuff we didn't get to see in college all the time, but you could tell that, when he tried, sometimes he failed, but at least he tried in that scheme that he was running at Lane Kiffin. But he can't let that be the thing that holds him back from being successful. Look, you can look relaxed all day and feel like, I think I got it at this level. Everything's starting to slow down. But as soon as you think things are slowing down, especially in the preseason, then week one smacks you in the face. The rest of the regular season smacks you in the face. When those injuries start piling up on your offensive line, or your receivers are not as healthy, and you really got to throw to the next guy that you're really not comfortable with, how much is that relaxed and relaxed mentality going to get you over the hump? You could be cool, calm, and composed until you're playing the Eagles twice a year, right? And you're dealing with the Cooper DeJean, and you're dealing with the Quinyon Mitchell and the Jalen Carter in your face every once in a while, or when the running game's not working and they depend on you to make plays, right? Hopefully 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝗲𝘀𝗀 is healthy. Hopefully Tyrone Tracy is everything that they wanted him to be from last year. Hopefully, Devin Singletary, helps out more than he did last year. But who knows? Nobody really knows what's going to happen. We can evaluate preseason, and I do evaluate it a little higher than the normal person, right? And that's why we're obviously talking about this. He's around two quarterbacks that have been starters in this league, and Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. Jameis Winston and Russell Wilson. That's crazy. It almost sounded similar. Jameis did what he did, obviously having a lot of success at college, having a lot of success for the Buccaneers, throwing a ton of interceptions, but always finding himself on a team, which to me tells me that you're way beyond average at this point if you're a backup quarterback that's always finding yourself on teams. And obviously Jameis can spin the rock when he's fully dialed in. Russell Wilson has found himself on a couple teams, most notably last year with the Steelers. Even though I don't agree with the benching of Justin Fields when he was 4-2, leading the team in on the ground touchdowns or rushing touchdowns. But Russell Wilson is going to get your guys in command. He's going to get those guys who respect him. And obviously a guy that's had Super Bowl experience, being in two of them and winning one. Having the record that he did at home, like his first 4 years, was impressive too, barely losing in Seattle. But this is the time for Jackson Dart to ask the right questions, take the things that have been good with those two quarterbacks, and also separate the bad things that have happened in their careers thus far as well. I think he could really ground himself in the fact that not everything's going to go your way. And if everything's not going my way, how am I going to deal with that at the end of the day? Especially being on a team that still has a very mediocre offensive line. I will say this about Jackson Dart. I want to see him utilize the intermediate game, the short game, a lot more than he did in college, because I think that's truly the spread offenses and 12 personnel that are able to throw it short are the teams that have a lot of success. And I believe that in college, and I believe that in the NFL. And we know how complex that Brian Daboll's system can be. And a lot of people then think that he was going to be able to grasp it, and he grasped it. So that's kind of a win for him being a rookie, right? As a rookie, that could be a very complex, very hard playbook to learn, and it looks like he's learning it. I was at their practice, and I was super impressed by the way that he was able to organize the field, being able to utilize all those receivers. And it looks like that's one thing that the Giants and Brian Daboll were trying to hone in for Jackson, is to get him really comfortable at utilizing all six quadrants of the field. The 3, 1, middle, right, left, middle, right, between the 0 to 15 and then the 15 to, whatever down the field. Those are the 6 quadrants that we're talking about. And he was spinning the rock. So hopefully he gets better. Hopefully, the Giants let him cook, a bit, cook in the oven before they put him out there for a start that he really shouldn't start in. And hopefully his first start is not against the Eagles, right? Or the Commanders. Like, let him go against a team that is tough than you're trying to find a win versus a team that's already rock solid that's probably going to ruin his confidence. How many times have we seen that in the history of the NFL where quarterbacks or, rookie players go out there and they play a really good team and they get rattled for the rest of their careers for whatever reason? So the psyche is a big part of this game, but good thing on Jack Shedeur having a great preseason. Wish nothing but the best for that kid too, even though I personally wasn't super high on him. We'll see what happens. I think we're going to keep on with the theme here when it comes to quarterbacks, right? Because, just like in every college show, almost like we can't seem to not talk about Colorado, or we seem to not talk about Shedeur and what's been happening. But, roster cuts happen. Seems like Shedeur made the roster cut. He's sitting there at the 3rd position, Dillon Gabriel at number 2. And most importantly, the starter who we all thought was going to start this season is Joe Flacco. If you watch that second game that Shedeur played in, and you think that he's a great quarterback, I really question on why I was so low on him based off of some of the things that he was still doing, that he's bringing over from Colorado. He doesn't step up in the pocket. I mean, this guy was the most sacked quarterback in college football last year, and everybody kept saying his offensive line is so bad, but we're seeing the same thing happen in the NFL. He's not stepping up and letting that gap close in behind him and being really safe in the middle of that pile. He's feeling the pressure come from the outside, then rolling out and outside and, or kind of staying inside the middle of the field and letting these guys like sack him. I just don't see it, man. And, a lot of people are going to sit up here and say, oh, you hate Shedeur, blah, 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 and all this other stuff. And no, I don't hate Shedeur. The thing that, we'll actually get into that part here next, but let's talk about Dillon Gabriel. Dillon looks more poised. He puts the balls in the right spot. He does all the little things correctly. And exactly what I've been telling you guys for years on film with Dillon is like, despite his size, tell me one thing that Dillon does bad. He's been on 3 different teams and had success with all of them. He beat a college football playoff caliber team in Texas when he was at Oklahoma. People tend to forget that. He put that team on his back at Oklahoma in that game. If you watched the end of that game and said that Dillon Gabriel was a bad quarterback, I don't know what to tell you. Then he goes to arguably a worse team than what Bo Nix had at Oregon and goes undefeated in the regular season and wins the Big Ten. What does this guy have to do? I don't know. Here's what I'll say about Shedeur. And I love the way, and if you see me on Twitter, I love the way that Shedeur has conducted himself throughout this process. And we'll get to how Kevin Stefanski's handled this, but let's just be realistic, man. I want to see all these players do well, regardless of how I felt about them in college, and that has nothing to do with the Colorado thing. But I think the one thing that Shedeur fans are doing is they're cushioning him against the blowback and creating a fantasy world that's not real. And what I mean by that is he's walked through his whole life with the handout. Remember when they got to Colorado, Coach Prime saying that this is your quarterback, look at him. He didn't even have to fight for the job. At least that's what we feel like. He didn't have to fight for the job, right? And so you were gifted that. And then by the time, then the whole draft process, oh, he's a round one quarterback. And we sat up here and told you guys, he might not even be a first or second round quarterback, and he drops to the fifth round. Regardless of what you think about the conspiracy theories, nobody's bigger than that shield in the NFL, and they will not hold your hand. Look at his brother. Gets kicked off, or pretty much gets cut from the Buccaneers because he wants to be a hothead and fight people. This is not hate towards the young man, but I think what makes it easy to hate on the progress that Shedeur is trying to make is because of the fan base are not being real with themselves, right? They are creating this big balloon for him to fall on where he never feels the impact of the ground or the impact of anything that he does wrong or any critique that he does wrong, right? And so if you're Shedeur, you have to feel that. You have to feel like sometimes you're a little bulletproof. The thing is that doing YouTube, doing any video on Shedeur, and if it even sounds like I'm criticizing dude, I hate the dude or I hate everything that he does. And it's the fact that people are just not real with themselves. Just because you can criticize somebody doesn't mean that you hate them. What's so funny is we talk about Dillon Gabriel having a good game and everybody's like, well, Shedeur did better, blah, 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 in his first start, blah, 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 but they give no credit to Dillon. But I don't go around and say that they just hate Dillon Gabriel or, you know, they hate their guts. You never hear that from the opposite fan base. And so, you know, when you're honest with people, the gripes become truth more often because the entourage makes it seem like they do no wrong. He has an entourage of people, which is his fan base. And it makes it seem like he can do no wrong, which is holding him back from his development. And we'll get into that a little bit in a second. I did want to call out Kevin Stefanski in the way that he's handled this whole situation. He's not given any credence to his decisions. If you guys watch any of his press conferences, he's been very, very short on the way that he's handled this quarterback situation, and it's been beautiful. I think he already knew that Joe needed to start for this team. Kenny got traded away. We already saw that situation happen. He's with the Raiders now. I believe that Dillon has always been a guy that they've been very high on, or why pick him where they picked him. And I've been very high on Dillon for years. And again, the only thing that people can point out is his height, right? But I don't think this is teaching a lesson to Shedeur more than Kevin Stefanski. People tend to forget he was a 2-time coach of the year. He is a quarterback guy. He's an offensive guy. And so he knows what he wants. For people to say that, oh, he's racist and this, that, and the third, I think that's absolutely funny because didn't they just trade for Deshaun Watson a couple years ago? Didn't they draft Dorian Thompson-Robinson? Am I missing something here? Didn't they go and grab Tyler Huntley out of the free agency before they cut him? Like, oh, he's so racist. Okay. But that's just what the perception of this whole situation is giving us at this point in time, is like that everybody hates Shedeur and it's some narrative when the fans themselves create their own narratives. This was the worst situation for somebody like Shedeur to walk into, because the controversy that's happening is really happening for Dillon Gabriel. Look, he's not getting talked enough about. I even think the same thing with Cam Ward. Cam Ward's not getting talked enough about. Why are we talking about a 5th round pick more than the number 1 pick in the draft? Why are we not talking about Dillon Gabriel more? He was drafted higher than Shedeur. But what people don't realize is Dillon is trying to, even though he's proved everything that he can outside of winning a Heisman and winning a national championship, he's trying to prove the doubters wrong still. And by the statistics and the stats and the wins and going to all these teams and proving people wrong over and over and over, he's still trying to prove the doubters wrong because all they can do is talk about his height. which makes Shedeur's job even harder trying to find a position on this team because you have a guy that's fighting for something. And then you have a leader in Joe Flacco who already has come out and said, I'm not your mentors. So these guys are really navigating rough waters here. They really are the ones that are trying to build their own destiny, which is either going to make and break them as a quarterback. This is not the handoff that a lot of people were thinking that was going to happen with Dylan and Shedeur. But by all accounts, we tried to tell everybody that Dylan was a better quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. And the NFL has spoken not only by their draft position, but Kevin Stefanski has spoken as an NFL coach and who he believes should be one of the quarterbacks on his team. Let's go back to the Shedeur a little bit, man. He's been smiling through a lot of criticism, which is good until the smiles become a mask of a deeper issue. Listen to what I'm saying here. Haven't we seen him smile on every press conference? Anytime somebody has said something that it comes to criticism, oh, I don't worry about this, biggest smile on his face. Well, I mean, I think he got humbled a little bit. He's probably changing his approach. But I really think there's a lot of stuff deep down inside that is bothering Shedeur. And I would love him to be a little bit more brash when it comes to the comments that people are making, other than say, oh, I don't care about what they say. We're all human. Maybe it not be anybody online that bothers him, but I'm sure that there's people out there, there's comments that are made that really do bother him. I'm sure when he looks at the comments about him, what is really happening with, the situation that he's in? What, how did it come to this? You know what I'm saying? How do we get to this stage of, man, everybody kept talking about how good of a quarterback I was, and I ended up in the 5th round of the draft. That's got to be bothering you, even through this process of seeing your name 3rd on the depth chart, and basically everybody's saying that you might get cut from this team. He's got to face some demons every once in a while, and he's got to be real with himself. You can't smile through everything, and you can't smile through adversity, because it's not the realistic world we built. But his fan base is the one that's building this fantasy world that he thinks he lives in, and thinks that it's okay. Yeah, you're being a leader by just smiling through the pain. But that's not how normal people get through things. And before you could be a good player on the field, you have to make sure everything in your life is straight too, as an individual person. You hear this time and time again from a lot of pro players that things in your personal life can affect things that are happening in your professional life. Even with us, just because we're not out there throwing or catching a football or kicking field goals doesn't mean that some of our problems from work might not bleed into our personal life, and vice versa. And I think this is a very important lesson for Shedeur, to sometimes it's okay to be a little brash. One Fly Amigo had a comment earlier saying Shedeur being quarterback 3 is modern day racism to try to break him. I mean, you both know he's better than Gabriel. They sabotaged Sanders by making him run with the 4s. That's all got cut. I don't think so. I think the way that you practice, the way that you prepare yourself, the way that you talk to your peers, the way that you learn the playbook, the way that you ask questions, the way that you take notes, the way that you show up in the facilities, these are the things that we don't know, guys. And so by everybody saying that, this is racism and everything, you don't know that. I don't know that. Only the dudes in those 4 walls know exactly how Shedeur has prepared himself. So it's the lazy excuse to say that it's racism. It's the lazy excuse to say that, he just likes somebody better than, he just liked Dylan better than Shedeur. It's all bullshit at the end of the day. And I don't like to curse on the show all the time, but it's bullshit. The thing is that there was something on the Browns, in the coaching staff, in the front office, whatever it was, the coaches made a decision to put him at number 3 because there was something. It may not have been the play, but there was something else in the way that he conducted himself, in saying that you are a quarterback 3 on this team. The other 2 quarterbacks just were better. And I'll leave it at that. We got to stop making these excuses for this dude, man. What you Shedeur fans don't understand is you're going to make this dude a worse player by always giving excuses for him. He's got to fall on his own sword every once in a while, guys. And everything can't be sunshines and rainbows. And everything can't be an excuse of why he can't get his way. He got his way for years. And he had success with Colorado. But still, by the way that you guys are hyping him up, should have made him a Heisman winner. Should have made him a national champion. But instead, and I'll leave you with this, is 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝘲𝘀𝗀, who is a college football Hall of Famer, the real number 2 of Colorado, should have got his jersey retired in that stadium. Should have got his jersey retired for the Colorado Buffaloes. But because one dude that's always got his way in Shedeur Sanders was the quarterback for Colorado in a time where they came off an abysmal season, didn't really do much other than put up a bunch of throwing stats, got his number retired versus the guy that just now was named a college football Hall of Famer and probably the best Colorado player outside of Rashaan Salaam, I'm sorry. And 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝘀𝘀 didn't get his jersey retired. It is what it is. People use the excuse about Ford being out there blocking for him. Defense against him was 4 also and got sacked 5 times against crappy defense. Look, if you're not stepping up into the pocket, these are fundamentals we learned as little boys playing quarterback. You are the start of why your offensive line is bad. It is what it is. I'm off the Shedeur thing. All right, let's get into these NFL yearly awards. I don't know why it says NEL. I don't know what the NEL is, but NFL yearly awards, man. Let's get into the first one. Coach of the Year. Me personally, I think Sean Payton will be Coach of the Year. Great team around him. Had a fantastic draft, getting Jahdae Barron and RJ Harvey and Pat Bryant, and bringing in Talanoa Hufanga and Drake Greenlaw, extending Zach Allen. Yeah, they're going to have a fantastic team. I don't think Bo, Jaden, or Michael Penix is going to have a regression. I don't think Caleb's going to have a regression. I think this is the first year where we don't see like a sophomore slump for these guys. I just think their age and experience make them better than that. Making important moves like getting rid of Vele to promote a Pat Bryant inside your offense, who I said and he said too should be the next Michael Thomas for them. They're going to be a dynamic team. I think that they're going to win the AFC West, and I think that's the reason why Sean Payton is probably going to be Coach of the Year. And look, the way that they drafted and the pieces that they put around Bo's going to have a more comfortable offense to run in with Sean Payton. The rest of the guys, Ben Johnson for Don, Sean McVay for Hayden. Khalid chooses Mike Vrabel, which is one that I was on the brink of choosing as well. I'm just not as sure about Drake May as I am Bo Nix. Sean Payton for Sora and the ECG pick to want to put your money on. Sean Payton at the end of the day. That's what it came down to. Let's get into Defensive Rookie of the Year. Look, I look at Seattle's defense, and when they drafted this guy, I was absolutely like, yep, that works. That seems like that's a good fit. Nickel Man Worry, man. Look, Tyreek Woolen, Nickel Man Worry, Devin Witherspoon, they're going to be hitting people, and they're going to be making big plays. And when I think about Nickel Man Worry coming out of South Carolina, we talked about this kid many, many times. Big play potential. Some of the rules are going to favor the way that he plays in the NFL, and I can't wait to see him put up big play after big play after big play. He's going to be absolutely fantastic coming down the stretch, and he'll be able to handle all those running backs in the NFC West too. The Kyren Williams and the Christian McCaffreys of the world. he's going to be good against those guys. Kyler Murray is going to have a really hard time dealing with 𝗕𝗂𝗡𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏 deep. You can play a deep third. Like, he's going to be awesome. And when Kyler Murray thinks he's about to bust a big run, hey, man, you got 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝗶𝗶𝗀𝗀 staring you down. He might light you up. Where the 49ers are lacking in wide receiver depth, you plug a 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 to play defense against them, he may have a really big day. And I think the Rams will be good, but that depends on the quarterback situation with Matt Stafford. Does Matt Stafford get tagged by 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 a couple times? Who knows? I just think it's such a great fit for Seattle and the way that they have their defensive back unit set up. I know a lot of people keep saying Legion of Boom 2.0. I don't think so. I think these guys are trying to dig in their own legacy. And 𝗕𝘂𝘀𝘀𝗀𝗀𝗀 is going to add on to what, especially what Devin Witherspoon does. Those two guys are going to be hitting people all year. Defensive Rookie of the Year for everybody else. Don has Mason Graham, Jahad Campbell for Khalid, and then Sora, 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀, and the ECG pick is going to be 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀. That he's going to be the guy that the whole group as a whole, when we came down to it, had picked, 𝙎𝙤𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀 to probably be the Defensive Rookie of the Year. Offensive Rookie of the Year. I may be biased when I say this. Actually, I'm not. I'm really, really high on the Panthers, man, and the way that they've built their offense. And even getting rid of Adam Thielen is opening the door directly for 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 to come in and just be the guy that Xavier Legette should have been for them last year. But I don't see that there's any possible way that 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 doesn't be good for the Panthers. Look, Bryce Young, because he's so small, automatically throws an overarching throw when he does have some, guys like Adam Thielen and the rest of those boys that are not as tall. 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 is going to come in there and be kind of the mesh between an overthrown or, a tall pass to being just right and for 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀's grasp. Look, he had a phenomenal camp. They played Jaguars week 1. And just like he had a big opening day last year in college, I think what you're going to see is the same. I think 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 comes out of week 1 as the best receiver in the NFL statistics-wise. 190 yards, 3 touchdowns. Bryce Young looks like an absolute demon. That's just my prediction. And, if you watch him in the preseason, you're like, man, he's just faster, bigger, can run routes. A lot of people had this criticism that he can't get separation, which is not only not true, but didn't do it a ton. But the one thing that he is good at is people want to say 50-50 balls. He's not a 50-50 ball kind of guy either, because he never was put in a position to do that a ton. He's one of those guys that contested catches, doesn't matter. Contested catch or not, it's still a catch, right? Regardless if he gets separation or not. First downs are still first downs. Big plays are still big plays, regardless of who's covering you, right? Give me 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 as offensive rookie of the year. Don picks TreVeyon Henderson. I think that's a really good pick. Matthew Golden for Hayden and Khalid. They're both high on him. One is biased because he's a Green Bay fan. Sora chooses Cam Ward. And as a unit, Matthew Golden, we think, will be rookie of the year when it comes to grabbing the median of what everybody thinks about. T-Bass is in the chat. He says, reading message boards of Vikings fans are already trying to convince yourself that the Parsons trade isn't that big of a deal. Yeah, that's crazy. Yeah, that's crazy. Receivers don't get rookie of the year a lot. He has to have huge stats. He will. I mean, just think about it, man. Like, this draft has big play potential for a lot of different players, but the ones that can win rookie of the year: 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀, Amarion Hampton, RJ Harvey, Cam Ward, right? Those are like the main 4 that you really think about. But let's look at the scheme. Let's look at all that stuff too. And I think 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀 fits in. And Dave Canales is a ex-wide receiver coach. Never forget that. He's going to unlock 𝙤𝙁𝙘𝗵𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀𝗀. I'm just very high on Tet. I think he's definitely going to be the number one target out there. While everybody else is lacking, he'll step up to the plate. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Defensive Player of the Year. I have Jessie Bates from the Falcons, man. I'm very high on the Falcons this year. I think they're going to go really, really far. Got to watch him in Atlanta a couple weeks ago do some work. Look, Jessie Bates proved me wrong last year. He had a great year last year. Got to pair up with his boy Justin Simmons. And again, they were just a couple pieces away from being really good on that defense. Look, Braylon Trice got hurt early on. Didn't even get to step on the field during the regular season. Not only do you bring him back, you drafted James Pierce and Jalen Walker. You're talking about guys that are going to put pressure on any offense they go against. Doesn't matter where Jessie Bates is and where he's going to line up. You put pressure on him and he's in the right spot, he's probably going to get an interception here or there, right? And I think he's going to get a ton of them. Just like I feel about Nickelman, where you're going to be able to make big plays. I think Jessie Bates has proved that he's a top safety in this league and kind of had a resurgence from where he was right before he got to the Falcons. Like, he had a couple down years and gets to the Falcons and right back up to the top he goes. I think with the little help of Xavier Watts too, coming over and getting drafted from Notre Dame was fantastic. If you're going to get rid of a Justin Simmons, you got to bring in his replacement. Xavier Watts might be Kyle Hamilton on the Falcons next to Jessie Bates, which is absolutely scary. Billy Bowman, he was a safety, played a lot of nickel. Looks like he's listed at nickelback. He should eat a little bit, but get him to lock up guys in the middle of the field is going to leave Jessie Bates to fly around and do all kinds of stuff. He's going to get a ton of tackles. He's going to get a ton of interceptions. I think Jessie Bates is the Defensive Player of the Year, with just how everything is lined up. I'm not done with the Falcons talk, by the way, but everybody else, Don thinks Aiden Hutchinson is coming back off that injury is going to be Defensive Player of the Year. Aiden and Khalid choosing TJ Watt at his elder age. Source says Fred Warner. And so TJ Watt was the median. TJ Watt is the guy that you should put your money on based off of where we had it, him in our rankings. We have 4 players, and that's where, most of the voting came out for TJ Watt. So there it is. Got 2 more, man. Offensive Player of the Year. My Offensive Player of the Year. I told you the Falcons talk is not done, right? Probably thinking Drake May. Probably thinking Kyle Pitts, maybe. Not as likely. Maybe Michael Penix Jr. Nah, man, I'm going Bijan Robinson. I think Bijan Robinson should be the one that you guys choose in fantasy. And all your fantasy drafts is number 1. If you got that pick, or if he's the best player available, you should pick him up. I think he's the next LaDainian Tomlinson type running back that this league is going to see. Bijan from here on out for probably the next 4 to 5 years is going to be a 17 to 2,000 yard combined back. 1,400 yards on the ground last year, 400 in the air, 17 combined touchdowns. He might meet the 20 touchdown mark this year with the way that Michael Penix Jr. and that offensive line is going to block for him. I think he should replicate a lot of what Saquon Barkley did last year. It should look a little bit of Saquon Barkley-esque out there for Atlanta. And then with the better quarterback under center, look, if you guys don't have any stock in Michael Penix Jr., I don't know what you're doing, man. I think he's going to be absolutely dynamic. And what's going to help Bijan be good is because the vertical threat that they're going to have on the Falcons this year, with Drake London, and did I say Drake May earlier? I meant to say Drake London. Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Darnell Mooney. You have Ray McLeod, who's been very decent for them. They should eat up pretty much all the downfield replication of 15-yard, completions, while they're trying to cover all of that on defenses. You have Bijan that's taking a Texas route for 17 yards. Have him taking a flat route, making a guy miss, getting 20, 21 yards upfield. People tend to forget how good Bijan Robinson is at catching the ball. Bijan Robinson could be a wide receiver in his next life if you really wanted to. Just go watch it. It's one of the things that I was high on Bijan Robinson for was his catching ability. But one thing that I was critical of is his utilization of the full field, especially when he was running the rock. Look, I said that he was deficient on the left side of the field. You go back, Next Gen Stats even said the same thing. Go look at some of those charts. Towards the end of the season, he started to get it. But the one thing I like about Bijan is he's starting in the running game to utilize the whole field effectively in his runs. You're seeing the 20-yard runs on the left, right, and up the middle. And, yeah, Bijan's one of those ones, man. And I'm glad he's grown into his own. And I had him as number 5 on my running back list, which everybody was like, wow, that's diabolical. But I wanted to see him get better at utilizing the field, and he has. And he's taken the world by storm. And the Falcons got them 1-on-1s. The rest of the guys, Saquon, Ja'Marr Chase. But we have Saquon yet again coming in and scooping up a yearly award as Offensive Player of the Year. Last but not least, we got to talk about the MVP votes, right? And there's one guy that I think got severely stumped last year. He should have been the MVP. And sorry, I got a text message I was trying to read, but he should have got MVP last year. And I think it's Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson should be better, even better than last year. And that's hard to say when he had 4,100 yards, 41 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, 915 on the ground, 4 touchdowns, well over 5,000 yards last year. But what's important is the way that they built this team up. Emory Jones from LSU and Carson Vincent not only bring a little bit of depth for the offensive line, these guys are bona fide future starters in the way that they've been playing. Especially Carson Vincent. I think he's really turned some heads for a lot of people. Coming out of Alabama A&M, too. I got to witness him out at the Senior Bowl. He was fantastic. Some of your favorite edge rushers like Shamar Stewart were getting clamped up by Carson Vincent. Let me tell you that. LaJohntay Wester can be a better version of Hollywood Brown if he's given the chance. Look, I know a lot of people like the receivers that they have there, Rashad Bateman and those guys, but I'm not a big fan. And I think LaJohntay, from not only special team acclimate, can really step in that offense and make a big leap for them and give them just stretch the field like he did at Colorado, man. Keaton Mitchell can bring another flex in at running back that they haven't seen. As you see, they got, Justice Hill and most importantly, Derrick Henry running the rock for them. But Keaton Mitchell being back just gives them a little bit of juice that, guy has breakaway speed, can be really, really shifty. And most importantly, in the passing game, right? We talked about Bijan being that guy, but I want to see Keaton Mitchell catch the rock out of the backfield. And help Lamar get the ball down the field when you're threatening that close to your own side of the ball. Any good running mate to an offense to be productive and to get a lot of yards is your defense. Their defense added Malachi Starks. They added Mike Green. They added Aeneas Peebles, one of our favorite D tackles. If you haven't seen him play, go watch him play at Virginia Tech and Texas A&M previous to that. Jay Higgins out of Iowa made the roster, which was diabolical. He should have been on somebody's roster. But Jair Alexander kind of brings a little bit of juice because that's his ex-teammate in Lamar Jackson. So Jair and Lamar get to play together. I'm sure that was like a bucket list type of thing. If they could, then they would. And I don't think it was a no-brainer on why Jair Alexander wanted to end up with the Ravens. Mark Andrews should be fully healthy this year with the 1-2 punch with Isaiah Likely, and you guys know how dynamic and deadly that could be. With the defense that's going to be able to get early stops to get their offense back on the field to score points, I don't see how he doesn't have an up in production. And I don't know if Derrick Henry is going to take a step back this year. He may. I don't know if he's going to have the year that he had, which is also going to give Lamar Jackson another opportunity to be more vertical, to do the Houdini type stuff that he's going to do. And so I have Lamar Jackson as my MVP. Everybody pretty much has either Jalen Hurts or Lamar Jackson, but the ECG nod is going to be Lamar Jackson for the yearly awards. All right, guys. Well, that's pretty much the end of the show. Let me get into a couple of these comments before we get out of here. And if you guys want to ask any questions or, have any thoughts on anything that I talked about today, feel free to put in the comments. I think this has been a fantastic show. I got a lot of stuff that I've been meaning to say off my chest today. So, it's been pretty good. Lincoln says, nope, Matthew Golden going to eat more than Tet. He's the most healthy in the wide receiving room. But that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to get thrown the ball a lot. I mean, there's a lot of mouths to feed there. Are we just going to pass up the other guys that were bona fide wide receivers and they're going to be healthier this year? Like, they're coming in the most healthy that they've been as a wide receiving core. So I think Matthew Golden is going to be fantastic, but I don't see him being better than Tet. Like, Tet's definitely the number one guy. Dana said I took Gibbs over Bijan at 2. I think his touches increased this year. The only thing that concerns me about Jameer is the philosophy of that offense is changing completely from what Ben Johnson was there, right? I don't think it's going to change too much from what they did, but it's going to change just enough where I don't know if they're going to be throwing the ball a lot more, especially having Isaac Tesla. I mean, Isaac Tesla was amazing during the preseason. I think they're going to be throwing the ball even more. And the one way to keep Jared Goff healthy is to have him to continue to throw the rock. As you see, his peers think very highly of him. I think Jameer is still going to get his touches, and I think he's going to end up as a top 5 back in the league. But, I don't see him getting more touches than Bijan because Bijan's not splitting carries with anybody. Jameer is going to be splitting carries with David Montgomery still. I mean, you could talk about, what's his name from BYU being there, Tyler Algier, but it's been the Bijan that those carries and those touches have totally shifted. And I think this is the first year that I think Bijan definitely is going to take the reins. I think Tyler knows his position on that team. Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman are his 1 and 2. I think Zay's going to be fine. I think LeJounte is going to try to fit there right there in the 3. And it's kind of like how I feel about Xavier Worthy, right? Going to be able to stretch the field and get them a big play when they need to. I don't expect him to be a number 1 receiver, but I expect him to stretch the field. Wilson may have a chance to get on the field outside of the red zone. I think Hopkins comes in inside 20 for the Ravens. I think, man, I love Nuke, man, but he either needs to show in or show out. I don't know if he's going to be the guy that we expect him to be. And yeah, so all right. Well, if you guys don't have anything, I'm gonna get out of here. If I see some comments flowing, I'll address them. But this has been a great show, man. Appreciate everybody that came through. The views have been flowing in and out. I appreciate everybody that's new that came through and checked us out today. Micah Parsons being traded is absolutely insane, but for good reason, right? And I think we all understand that this has kind of been a long time coming for all of this. So we'll see exactly what happens. Zane says Lamar don't need a legit number 1 receiver. He can spread ball everywhere, which is, yeah, and he's got enough weapons to do it, right? I think that's definitely a strength of Lamar Jackson at this point is he's not selfish with the ball, regardless of what people say. You don't throw for 4,100 yards and run for another 9-something if you're selfish, right? So a 4,000-yard mark for a guy that almost ran the ball for 1,000 yards. That's insane. That just, shows me that a team wants to win, most importantly. And I think this may be the year for the Baltimore Ravens. But hey, man, I appreciate everybody for coming through. Thank you for checking me out today. If you guys didn't rewind it, watch the topics that we, we're obviously talking about today with Jackson Dart, Trey Hendrickson, and Shedeur and Micah, and some other things. I'll be able to chop this up for the rest of the week. Enjoy the games tonight. I know there's some games playing right now, so I'm about to turn on the TV, bring out my notebook, and watch some college football. Appreciate you